Hello, welcome back to our series on WinCC unified panels. In my past videos, I connected some Siemens PLCs, a 1200 and a 1500, and in this video, I'm going to be connecting to a Rockwell Compact Logics PLC, which is actually physically right here. That was the 1200 and that was the 1500 in the previous video. But in this one, we're going to be connecting with Ethernet IP as opposed to Profinet, which is the Siemens protocol that you might be familiar with. Okay, so I have my project from before, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a connection, which is how you define the path to the PLC and how to get tag data from it. Then we're going to add an HMI tag, and then we will add that to the screen and check that it works. All right, so let's go into connections here. I have my connections from before. Again, these were like automatically created by the devices and networks configuration in TIA portal, but we don't have this when we're connecting to a external different vendor PLC. So we're going to add new. This is going to prompt that we'll have to download the whole project. If you don't know what that means, go and see my other video. But I'm going to go Rockwell PLC, and we're going to go to communication driver. And there's quite a few options here, which you can actually load on more with some of the Siemens files that are available on their website. But I already have the Allen Bradley Ethernet IP version here. And then what this does is down at the bottom, you have the comfort panel side and the PLC side, which, by the way, if this panel is not here, make sure that you kind of swipe up and get to connection data. So on our side, we have our IP address, and on the PLC that we're trying to talk to, we're going to select the CPU type, the IP address, and then the communication path. So I'm going to be talking to a Compact Logics. The IP address, you just have to know it. It's 1.67 for me. And then the communication path, which this is important to know, and it is not very obvious, but this is a definition with Ethernet IP. And it is explained if you have access to Rockwell documentation, you can see it. But basically, if it's a compact logic, this is the correct communication path. But if you have control logics where there's different slots, you might need to know where the controller is versus where you're trying to connect to, and that's how you say what that path is. Okay, so now we're going to go and add a new tag table, mostly for organization. It's not really necessary, but do Rockwell. Open that up, and we're going to have to add these manually, or you could generate them and import them. But again, it is different than what we would be doing in TIA portal because we have access to the PLC project. We can just drag them in. Here we have to specify the tag name and the address in the PLC. Before we start, let's figure out what tags we need to add. I actually have that over here. Let me show you the All right, so this is my PLC. Okay, so pretty standard versus what I had shown on my Siemens PLCs. These are all in our controller scope. If you have them in main program, you'd have to specify the program name, a colon, and then the tag. For right now, I'm just going to add the controller tags. So let me go back to my Siemens side here. Okay, so we're going to do command start. This is going to be a bool. And then we want to specify the connection. Again, this is how we're actually communicating to the PLC. And then you have to define the address, which in our case, like I said, as a controller tag, we pretty much just type in the tag name. Okay, and then I will do the machine name. It added the connection for me automatically, and that was just called machine name. And then finally, I'll do the status run, which is an integer. And that was called run status. Okay. And let me just go ahead and add them to the screen here. All right, so just like before, I'm going to drag these in. I want to read the machine name, read the run integer, and then I'm going to add a button to change the command start. So I'm going to have press tag, set tag value, and start. I'm going to set to 1, and then on release I'll set to 0. This can vary how you should do it depending on what the logic is on the PLC. All right, so I have the HMI project downloaded to the HMI now, and you can see that the fields I added, there's a problem with the status, and I can point out now what I did wrong when I was adding the tags. So let's go back to the HMI tags here and take a look at status run. So the data type I added was an integer, but you can see in the Rockwell side that it's actually a double int or a dint. So what we need to do here is change the data type to dint. And it's kind of a funny mistake that I made, and it's important to actually think about. So in Rockwell, when you add like integer typed values, it's going to add it by default as a double integer, and that's because of the way that it handles memory. It's 32-bit. In Siemens, it adds things by default as an integer, so it's actually an easy thing to get mixed up, and I was thinking Siemens when I was adding this, but it was a double int in reality. So just make sure, again, you're adding things manually here. You need to make sure that they're exact in the tag name and the address and the data type. So if you have a broken connection, make sure you go back and double check those things. So let's go and download this panel one more time. Okay, so getting the project back open here, you can see that now we do have the status is okay, the connection to the tag is fine, and we can go ahead and change that value and change it back to 0. Now you can see when I hold this down, run status is 1, command start, changing, and we change their name. Awesome. So we got communication to a Rockwell PLC. Super awesome if you have different types of machines in your facility. So you can communicate it with everything with a WinCC unified panel. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.